we are going to really focus on this issue of mentoring. And for those of you, there are a few of you I know were here a little bit earlier in the day, you'll see a couple things that we've already discussed, but there is actually quite a bit that's different. And this is going to be an interactive session. So I need you to eat over the next 20 minutes or so and digest a little bit, but not go to sleep. And then from there, I'm going to put you all to work. And I hope at the end of our session, you're going to go back to your responsibilities, both in the clinics and in the labs and wherever you are at the university. And again, feel a little more invigorated and prepared to be a mentor and prepared to be a mentee. Because to me, this is like leadership. You keep learning and learning and learning. And again, this is a skill that really imparts all of us with long-term career success and satisfaction. And we call it an art form because there is no one way to do it. And the challenge for each of us is to figure out our best way of being a mentor and a mentee. Again, it is a relationship between two or more people. Sometimes we have teams of mentors, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. But I think the challenge is, if we commit to a mentoring relationship, how do we really make it blossom and bloom and be worth the time and effort? Because goodness knows, we have constraints on everything we do. We have, if you're a clinical educator, you're busy teaching. If you're a practitioner, you don't have any spare time. And I want to make sure that your mentoring relationships really go to the next level, that you realize they do make a difference in your career. So what I hope you'll learn is we're going to just review briefly some of the mutual responsibilities in this professional relationship. And I'll talk a little bit about how our academic environment is changing that makes mentoring all the more important from my vantage point. And then we're going to be focusing on strategies that can enhance communication, give you some ways to think about overcoming difficulties that can occur in a mentoring relationship, which can happen because it's a relationship based on communication between humans, and we know that doesn't always go perfectly. And then most of all, I want you to be thinking about the issue of how we enhance scholarship while serving as a mentor. This is something where mentors can be very, very important. Now, I feel like I'm bringing coals to Newcastle. One of the things I think about Creighton University is, and your medical school in particular, it's very much an organization that has its values front and center. As I walk through the lobby of the hospital, I mean, it's part of your culture. And that's where I think mentoring is such a great fit for you and your leadership as a medical center and as an academic health center. It's based on trust, it's based on respect, integrity, and those to me are the elements that really are what we assume as professionalism. And I don't think you can have one without the other. I think we spend a great deal of time working on these issues with our students, but I think it's something that's the fabric of what we do, and I'm sure this is going to be the easy part of what we're doing today. Okay, now before I move on, are any of you students at this point? Okay, so the good news is I have faculty. Are there a few senior faculty in the room that are full professors? Thank you. Okay, very good. Any associate professors? Okay, great. And then are the rest of you junior or residents? Junior faculty, assistant professors? Okay, good. Okay. Now also, this is a networking event. It's a workshop. So when we do our interactive sessions, make sure you go home with a new email address of a colleague you've just met today. Don't be shy. This is the kind of workshop where I want you to feel refreshed and refurbished and ready to go out and brave the weather again, okay? And I do want to make a very positive comment about the gift shop. Archie forgot to mention to you, I was a graduate student at Iowa, so I'm a Hawkeye, so I'm giving you full disclosure. And you notice how the Hawkeye colors match the Steeler colors. Okay, so I just want to let you know, in the gift shop, they didn't have Steelers memorabilia, but they had Hawkeye things right next to the red and white things that, you know, those are kind of yucky, but okay. Okay, don't we all know who to turn for advice? I mean, how many of you have seen the movies, you know, that Yoda is involved with? Right. Yoda is actually almost the best mentor. If you go back and watch those movies, he asks Luke Skywalker questions. He never tells Luke Skywalker what to do. And I would argue, if I had to ask each of you to write on a piece of paper one person at your institution you turn to for some wisdom or advice, you would write down the name of someone that is a Yoda to you here at the institution. That's someone that's grounded, centered, that you trust. And most likely, the reason you trust them is that they are a person of high integrity, they're thoughtful, they're a great listener, and their ears may not wiggle like Yoda, but they have something about them that really makes us come back to what our values are. Now, we also know, because you're faculty and you're very successful at what you do, sometimes we have to avoid certain folks. And there are good mentors, the mentors that help us with our papers and help us get our grants funded or help us with our teaching. Those are easy, but we all know once in a while there's somebody in there who we don't mesh with, and it could look like the green person here. But the challenge is not whether you have a mentor that's good or bad or perfect or imperfect, but as a mentee, that you learn from both. So I learn as an administrator oftentimes as much from situations that aren't perfect or they're a little green and I want to avoid them, as I do from the things that are perfect. And in fact, we know that how our brain works is that we learn more from our mistakes. So if we never make mistakes or our mentoring relationships aren't always perfect, don't get discouraged, but use as an opportunity to, again, learn how to do it better. Okay? And I think another analogy I'll give, those of you who write grants in the room here, okay? How many times have we written grant proposals, and each time we try to make it better and better and better? And mentoring has that capacity. Now, let me give you my vantage point on why I think mentoring is now front and center in our culture. And I think, again, it comes back to the fact that our academic health centers, our medical schools, have become increasingly complex. Now, let me try to illustrate for you what I mean by complex. Well, my timer didn't work, but here's the model of what academic careers used to look like. And probably, well, we could go back in time maybe to the 40s or 50s. But you had an appointment as a student. You did your postdoc or your residency. From there, you picked a place to internship or maybe get some more training. And from there, you took your first faculty appointment at a university. If you did well, you got promoted. And then you moved along, and you're part of a university. It was all very linear. In contrast, what we have today is something, well, I'm sorry, my timer's not working, something that's much more mixed. So bear with me for a second. Here you are, you've taken an appointment as a junior faculty member in a department. At the same time, you took a secondary appointment. So you have an appointment over in a clinical department, so you have 2 appointments. Okay, and then here you are. You were asked to be part of an institute that's focused on education. And your research involves obesity studies, and it involves a whole network of people in the institution. And then you've gotten involved with a national committee that intersects with some of your interests. And here's where the medical school is. It's shifted focus. And so the larger university is over here. And then the world is getting global. So many of the things we do, our collaborators and partners are not only here in Omaha, but they're at other institutions around the country. If you look at this picture, this is much harder to think about strategically how to navigate your career. You know, when everything's linear, you just plug in and you go step by step. We have a situation here now in academic medicine where we have lots of opportunities. And with opportunities comes the responsibility of making wise choices. So I think, again, with the economic climate we're all facing, where a lot of the resources that we're used to having from both the state and the federal governments are under siege around the country, we're at a time where there's intense competition for resources. And this is happening not just on the research side, and you know I'm a basic scientist, it's happening on the clinical side. And we're all asked to do more for our patients, see more patients, and we know come 2014, our patient care load is going to become even greater than it is now. So these are things that, to me, underscore how come academic careers are so complex. But this really lays the groundwork for why mentoring is so important, because each of us comes to the table of our academic lives with different stories. We've trained in different parts of the country. Maybe we were an undergraduate in California. Maybe then we did our postdoc training here in Nebraska. Maybe we did a second postdoc up in Michigan and came back to Omaha and Creighton because we like it so much. And as we begin to move our faculty career along as an assistant professor, we need to be thinking about what's the path that will allow me to build the scholarly credentials that I'm seeking to create and serve others. And again, when you're at an institution like Creighton, who will help me? And you have lots of wonderful resources. Many of them are here in the room today. I think it's absolutely wonderful that your dean is taking time out of his busy schedule to attend a session on mentoring. To me, that speaks volumes. And likewise, who in the organization can help me meet my goals? Now, again, this is what I think is wonderful about academic medicine. We have this system where our personal goals are important, and yet at the same time, if you've chosen your institution wisely, your personal goals also match the institutional and the organizational goals. And so I'm convinced all of you are here and can have many years of a long, successful career at this institution. But at the same time, we all have to make sure we're headed along a path that will keep us vital and contributing to the organization and sustain ourselves as things change, and they will change. I don't know if any of you have children in the room, but life changes. And so why is mentoring important? For me, in my administrative role, mentoring is really important because my responsibility is to recruit and retain individuals like yourself, high performers, the talent that's needed to run a medical school. Mentoring also does a host of other things. When we have new members coming in, good mentoring can acculturate them and get them up to speed very fast. It makes sure everyone's stable and productive, things that deans worry about. It also is a great way to ensure a promotion of diversity in thought and style, because mentoring is a good way to value the gifts of each individual that comes to our academic community. And last but not least, developing leadership talent. That's something that's absolutely vital. I know it's on the mind of your dean, or he wouldn't be supporting this type of program. And frankly, long term, being a mentor, being generous with your own experience and being willing to help another professional along their path, that generativity is something that is of just wonderful value. It is, to me, one of the most satisfying parts of being a full professor. And I think if I took a poll of those of you who are in the room that are full professors, you'll likely agree with me. So what is mentoring? It is a social process that has multi-dimensions. It really is a commitment of one individual to another at the heart of it to really contribute to enhance the professional abilities of that individual. And I think it's important to remember that when we talk about mentoring, it's not to enable the mentor to make a clone of him or herself. It's really to facilitate the growth of another professional who has unique talents, unique passions, unique strengths, and to help them along their career path. And remember, Most of us are going to be working till we're 70 or pushing 80. For those of you who are still in your 20s, you've got another 40 years ahead or so or more. And you want to have an academic career that can be there for the tough times and be there for the good times. So you want to be thinking long-term about your career success. And sure, we're worried about the tasks we have to do today, what we have to get done by Friday, what's due in by the end of February. But we also need to be planning for the long haul, because that's how our institutions will really achieve their full potential. Okay, there are lots of benefits to having a mentor. If you're a scientist or a scholar, it's a great way to learn your trade and get your skills. A mentor can be a wonderful help as you self-determine which is your path. They can give you that advice that you need for career planning. Mentors are also a wonderful source of that intangible called confidence. And I don't know, most of you been involved with interviewing medical students or graduate students? I think sometimes it's so precious when they come to us, because sometimes they're so eager and they're so nervous, and you just want to give them a shot of confidence, but you can't because you're interviewing them. But that's what mentors are for, okay? And then this examination of the environment. None of us in academic medicine can afford to put our heads in the sand. We're in a very competitive marketplace. The issues facing our states and facing our federal government can profoundly impact us. And also, we're training professionals for a lifelong career of service as physicians, as scholars. And it's important that we train them to be global citizens. And I think it's important that a mentor can help along with these kinds of issues. Now, one thing I want to mention is mentoring can be very informal. There's sort of a gradation. It can go from the informal to the very formal. Mentoring as informal as can be as how you watch a faculty member modeling, introducing a speaker, or introducing a colleague, or offering to read a draft of your manuscript. We're going to talk a little bit more about formal mentoring programs, because I personally am involved with quite a few of them and really see them bringing a lot of value to our academic institution. But let me just take you through a couple different types of mentoring. What we call natural mentoring, where we help each other; situational, where sometimes we're assigned to be an advisor or help on a project; supervisory mentoring. And this can be difficult because sometimes the person who's mentoring us is also the person who evaluates us. But what I'm really going to focus on today are more formal facilitated mentoring, where both parties mutually agree to help each other, and there's some outcomes that are expected. And those outcomes can be of lasting value to the organization. And then don't forget, mentees can go on their own and seek out mentors. So again, I'm sure all of you have been approached at one time or other by someone who's really impressed with something that you do, and the student wants a little advice, or they want to know, how did you do this? You make it look so easy. I'm sure you've all had that experience. So again, whatever the mentoring is, whether it's informal or formal, it can be of tremendous value. Now, natural mentoring is kind of what we do as good citizens. And to me, this is part of being a professional. And I just want to mention it because sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for it. It is really usually within our local sphere of action, the individuals we spend the most times with in our departments. It can often be a senior to junior relationship, but not always. Situational mentoring is usually something that's put there for a purpose. And it's either to jumpstart something, or we want to orient something. Maybe it might be peer-to-peer mentoring, which can be a situation where a group of faculty, whether they're young or old, or men or women, or individuals who've just moved to Nebraska that want to talk to somebody who speaks Pittsburghese, okay? That's another type of situational mentoring. And supervisory mentoring. This is the part that if you've been doing advising, you're pretty familiar with this already, because this is a relationship where we can argue whether an advisor is a mentor, but I would say, yeah, a little bit. You have to wear a lot of hats in this kind of role, because sometimes your students and residents or clinical fellows need a lot of guidance. The formal facilitated mentoring is when we have structured programs where both parties commit to being part of a program. The formats can vary very much, and I'm co-director of a KL2 funded by NIH, where we have 30 junior clinical faculty that have teams of mentors. And they're in the program for 3 to 4 years, and they have to meet with their teams of mentors. They sign a contract annually. And in fact, we monitor that because we want to make sure that when individuals agree to this relationship, because it is an investment of our institutional time in their development, we want to make sure the pairs or teams are moving forward. The key with a formal program is there has to be some accountability. And the accountability is two things. If things are going well, that's great. We can all say hooray and get some more NIH funding or whatever the outcome is. If it's not going well, accountability is there to help try and save it and fix it, and to make sure we're using our time effectively. Because again, time is our most precious element. I would come back to the theme that mentoring is essential for professional development, because in all our fields, whether you're a surgeon or whether you're an anesthesiologist, family medicine, pediatrician, whether you're a pharmacologist like I am, or whatever your field is, there's so many more things to know to be effective in your role as an academic leader, as an assistant or associate or full professor, than just knowing the nuts and bolts of your technical background. And in many respects, not only for young professionals is mentoring a great way to empower self-confidence, it's really a great way to bring the organization together to really foster a culture where we move as one to accomplish some major goals. So these are some things for you to think about. Okay, again, it's a partnership where 2 or more people must agree, and the goal is to really, of one person, to enhance the skills of another. Now, there are responsibilities for both mentees and mentors. And mentees, some of the skills and responsibilities you have are being open to some suggestions and advice your experienced mentor may provide. I don't know if you can all think back to your days when you were students, but you were pretty self-directed and really didn't need to have anybody tell you what to do, right? We're all pretty independent. In reality, it takes a long time to grow and learn to accept feedback and guidance. This is not something we're born with. A good mentee must keep the relationship and the discussions with the mentor confidential. And this goes back to that fundamental value of trust and respect. If the mentor shared something very important and then walked out of the room and broadcast it at a department meeting, the mentee would cringe, and that would be the end of the relationship. Okay? We don't want that to happen. Mentors. Mentors, as they commit to facilitating a mentee's learning and growth, are there to provide what's needed. Sometimes it's networking. Sometimes it's, have you been introduced to this? Have you considered your publication record? To provide feedback. And most of all, to listen and provide encouragement. Oftentimes, mentees, when we seek mentoring, it's not so much that we need someone to tell us what to do, but we need someone to be our sounding board for our choices that we're making. I have choice A, I have choice B, I have choice C, and sometimes there's a choice out there we never considered. And a good mentor will help review that range of options, but then they're going to leave the decision to you as the mentee. I also argue that the best mentor is someone who asks challenging questions. Why are you going to do this? What's your motivation? Again, maintaining confidentiality, just like that's a responsibility for the mentee, that's essential for the mentor. Again, keep in mind, and this is our Division Chief of Internal Medicine, Wishwa Kapoor, who some of you may know with one of our mentees. You know, mentors are great. They can inspire you when, as a mentee, you're feeling kind of tired. You know, when's spring coming? You know, February seems like it's going on an awfully long time. That confidence and staying on track are two things that are vitally important that we can provide each other. And, you know, the mentor in turn benefits from this interaction too. It's a two-way story. And I think of conversations that we might have with a mentee. And, you know, so put on your mentor hat. You know, you're going to be helping them think through their purpose, their momentum, their performance, how well are they doing, what are their unique assets, are there some relationships they need to cultivate. And again, these are kind of the conversations that a mentee is trying to seek advice and guidance about. You know, how am I doing? Am I good enough? Am I going to be able to stay? I love Creighton. Am I meeting the bar? How do I measure? And what's my unique advantage that I can develop and cultivate so that I become incredibly valued to the organization, so then when it's time for promotion and tenure, I'll really sail through. And again, networks. You know, where are they? Are there new places I need to be looking? And anytime you take on a new role, say you've been asked to head a fellowship program or to be an assistant dean in the medical school, you've got a whole new realm of relationships, and you need to get help from individuals who have experience. And again, asking for help is a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness. And like all good things that are built on relationships, it thrives on good communication. And so what we're going to do now is switch into a little exercise, and the first thing I need you to do is all be observers, and I'm going to need a volunteer. Is there somebody who feels like being a mentee, who has a burning question, they want to come see me and I'm their mentor? Is somebody brave? I know this is terribly difficult in front of the dean, but don't be embarrassed, okay? Okay. Oh, come on. I'm working in my office. I'm the mentor. And if you can't see me, just kind of stand up so you can see me. Okay, and I'm waiting for a mentor to come knock at the door. It can't be you, Archie.
It can't be me.
No.
All right, so
come.
then I'm going to assign someone.
No, just they'll come. They'll come. Just be patient. I'm typing. Okay, just come knock on the door. Yeah, I'm working in my office. Okay. Yeah.
Shall I come around?
Sure. Yeah, I have a chair for you. Okay. Okay, knock on the door again. Okay, can you all tell what I'm doing? Email, right? Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, Kim. Good to see you.
Nice to see you, Dr.
Okay, please give me a minute. I've got to turn off my cell phone.
Certainly.
Okay, whoops. And let me take the phone off the hook because I was expecting a call. And we scheduled this meeting ahead, right? So we've got about 20 minutes to talk today. Okay.
I appreciate you taking the time to do that with me.
Okay. And also, you sent me the agenda ahead, so that was very helpful because I was able to read that paper that you sent me.
Okay. I ask you guys to speak up.
Okay. Okay. We'll stand up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that suggestion. You suggested that I organize my meetings with you ahead of time, so I appreciated that.
Okay, good. So how can I be of help today?
Well, actually, I kind of have a good problem, and I don't know how to solve it.
Okay.
Right now, I have my first grant that I'm actively working on.
Okay, a first grant.
And I'm very busy with it. I have a heavy workload, and I'm at a transition point where my teaching load's pretty heavy.
Okay.
And I'm going to get released, but right now I'm not because of the planning of this. And I just got another opportunity, and the opportunity was, I got an opportunity with the NIH to be invited to do an ad hoc grant review.
Okay.
And they want me to be able to do that in the next 30 days. And I've never done one before, and I'm afraid to say no, but I'm really worried that I can't handle all this work, and so I'm looking for some advice.
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about this for a little bit, and because I'm going to have to leave for another meeting, if we need to meet further, if there's some issues we need to talk about we don't get to today, let's reschedule. Okay. Okay, second, congratulations on the funding and the good news. Those are nice problems to have, but I'm sure you're excited about this kind of opportunity. But tell me a little bit more about what this extra reviewing you might need to do. How
Right.
soon do they need to know
Well,
whether you can do this?
Well, a project officer contacted me, and I never had this happen before. This
Okay.
email came up on my desk, and I went, I don't know this person.
Okay.
So I called my project officer on
Okay.
my grant,
Right.
knowing that they're really helpful to me, and said, I have this opportunity. And they said, well, whenever you can, you should try to take those.
Okay.
And I said, of course, you need to do what you need to do, but they're very good.
Okay.
It's not really in my field of study,
Okay.
this opportunity, but it is, they need a lot of reviewers.
Right.
And they said they wouldn't assign me to doing too much work.
Okay.
That maybe I'd do 3 grants and help a
Okay.
review team. And as I said, I went in and I looked. There's a primary, a secondary, and what's called
Okay.
a tertiary reviewer.
Mhm.
So I know that much about it.
Okay. Okay.
And they probably put me at a tertiary.
Okay.
But I'm really worried, truly worried, if I do a bad job this first time, because I don't
Right.
have the time to do this well. And
Mhm.
since I've not done it before, that I might ruin my future chances. And that's
Sure.
my big concern here,
Okay.
and I just don't know what to do.
Okay. Well, Kim, I think, first of all, I think it's great that you're concerned about doing a good job. So whatever you decide to do, whether you decide this is the review to do or not to do, I think that's a great way to approach it, that you really want to do a good professional job. I assume you review for journals and do manuscript reviews.
I have, yes.
Right,
That's
and
what
have you ever had to say no thank you to an editor and that I'm just too busy? Have you ever done that?
I really have trouble with saying no.
Okay,
I
well,
pretty much haven't been saying
okay.
no.
Okay.
I've pretty much been doing it.
Well, this is a challenge for faculty that are
Yeah.
trying to get their reputation established, and that's a good thing, but sometimes you do have to say no. So tell me, what are your teaching commitments this next month? How busy are you already?
Well,
Are you?
I'm on a clinical site,
Mm-hmm.
which in a couple
Right.
of months, that's going to be reduced substantially. But right now, I have 3 days a week there.
Okay, so your time is pretty precious this month. I'll give you some suggestions. And first of all, I can tell you're excited about this opportunity. So if you really want to do it, see if there's something you could take off your plate short term. I mean, that's one opportunity. Another one is talk to the program officer. See if there's going to be another panel in about 6 months. And just explain that you've just gotten this grant and your clinical load right now is pretty high and you're interested in helping, and see what they say. Now, they may say, oh, I really need you. Then it's going to be really hard to say no. Or they may say, well, you know what? I need somebody in June. That would be perfect. Okay? Now, alternatively, you might just say, this is way too outside of my field. If you do that and decline, I would see if you can give them a suggestion of someone who might know, might be able to take your place.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so Thomas, who works next door to you, I noticed you're good friends with him. I bet he's a good reviewer. You could give him the work. Okay.
So you can do that, huh?
Sometimes. I wouldn't do it all the time. Okay. Okay. Does that give you some next ideas of what you might do?
It does. I think that helped me a bit with a perspective on
Okay.
how to evaluate
Okay.
this.
Will you get in touch either by email, or we'll schedule a meeting in about 2 weeks and let me know how this goes?
Oh, that'd be great. I'd appreciate
Okay.
that.
Okay, so let's make sure we schedule a time, and it can be a brief meeting. And meanwhile, if something comes up that you need feedback on, send me an email and I'll be on the lookout for it. Okay? Thanks,
Thank
Kim.
you so much. I
Okay,
appreciate
great.
it.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay. She was a very focused mentee. Okay? She came in pretty organized, right? So what was good about this conversation? Or was there anything good about the conversation? You seem to enjoy it, Kim.
I enjoyed it very much.
Okay, so that's good. So what worked? What was going on between the two of us that worked?
You reduce the unnecessary interruptions by cutting off the phone.
Right. Do you notice I turned off my phone, my email, and I even turned away from my computer terminal? There is nothing worse than having a mentoring meeting with somebody and they're busy doing this while they're talking to you over their shoulder, okay? It speaks volumes that they're really not focused. Now, we talked together for a few minutes and I didn't know what Kim was going to bring me as a problem, but look how quickly we got to the heart of what her concern was. What was her concern? Did you get a sense of what her concern was? What? Yeah. Yeah.
She had a decision to make
Mhm.
and didn't know what the implications of the decision would be,
Right.
whether she made it yes or no, and wanted to
Right.
hear something about those
Right.
implications.
And as a mentor, did I make the, yeah.
As a young investigator,
Uh-huh.
as a young investigator, I think everybody wants opportunities, and they're always afraid if they turn an opportunity down, that these people may not come back.
Right, they're going to take you off the list and it's all or nothing, right. And likewise, she's probably been to faculty meetings or other faculty talk about how they're working on study section and it will be nice for her CV to have study section. I mean, there's some real positives to it. I serve on study sections all the time, so don't misconstrue me. But I think what we also saw is she came saying, I've got a lot of things on my plate. How do I manage it? Okay? Now, as a mentor, did I tell her what to do?
You are going to take if you want, try to see if you can get rid of something else.
That's a strategy. I gave her a suggestion, but I didn't say this is what you must do. Okay? Right. And in fact, what we did is we kind of looked at a range of options. Okay? Any of them would work. Okay? There are times we have to say no thank you. I cannot do it right now. It's much more courteous to be clear. Alternatively, program officers love it if you give them an alternative. You know, I can't do it.
I
Yep.
think that was a huge suggestion.
Okay.
That
Thank you.
strategic options you went through
Mhm.
was that I am very interested. I can't do this right now because of my clinical commitments.
Right.
But I am interested in this, and if you have something in the future or near future,
Right.
whether it's
Right.
3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road,
Mhm.
I'd be interested. I think
Right.
that lets them know that you really are interested in their
Right.
whatever
Right.
thing they're doing, but it may not fit. This was you asked me at the last minute kind of thing, and I
Right.
can't fit it into my schedule right now.
Right. And I think as a professional, if we commit to something, we keep our word, we'll do it. Now, also, I tried to make it neutral so if she decides to do it, it would be perfectly fine. Okay? I think that's where the art of being a good mentor is not telling your mentee what to do, other than the fact I wanted feedback, right? What was the feedback that I wanted from her? Kim, what was the feedback?
What decision you wanted me to tell you how it turned out?
How did it turn out? Okay, so I needed feedback to find out whether this was worthwhile doing. So what we're all going to do is practice being mentor, mentee, and mentee, listener, the person who gives both of you feedback. And again, what we did is I tried to set the stage. I'll take you through these steps, and then we're going to try practicing them. The more you can focus on that person in that time and space, it's a best habit. Those of you in the room who have administrative roles know this is what you do all the time, is you must listen hard. Ask probing questions. Now, I didn't say to Kim, oh, Kim, I don't know what study section is, but I knew that, but I wasn't quite sure, you know, what's her clinical load, what else is going on in her life. You know, I tried to keep it professional. I tried to paraphrase a little bit. Now, I'm not the best paraphraser. Are there any psychiatrists in the room? Well, you're trained. Okay, thank you. You are the best paraphrasers because you always do a great job of making sure your patients, that you've heard correctly what your patients say. There's an art form to this. This is not easy, but it is a really important step because it lets Kim know that I heard what she was saying. And Kim could have said to me, well, Joan, no, you got it wrong. I didn't mean that. You know, you didn't hear me right. Okay, that will happen. Okay? Now, we didn't pause too much because we've got a lot to do and we only have so much time. But if you pause a little bit and just kind of stay quiet, it lets the dust settle. And then if there are any more facts you need, and the fact I asked, have you done manuscript reviews? I wanted to know what your level of expertise was. And then ask you what would be best. Now, you didn't tell me what the solution was, but I did everything I could to make sure you as the mentee owns the solution. This is the key for mentoring because we're asked many times to mentor multiple individuals. It's almost impossible to mentor as many people who want you. Every single one of you, there are, for each person in the room here, there are probably 5 or 6 people that would love to have you as their mentor. You can do it as long as you don't take on the responsibility for the action. Your mentee has to take on that responsibility. Okay. So, summarize, review, and I always like to set a time and place. So what I'm going to have you do is if you can sort of form groups of 3 around the room, and if someone's loose, what we're going to do, I'll try to move you around. We'll start out where you'll have 2 minutes to be the mentor, the mentee, and the mentee will tell the mentor whatever the issue is. Then the mentor will have a minute or 2. You can interact together for about 3-4 minutes. Then the third person who's observing will give both of you feedback. And then we'll switch roles. We'll go around the 3, and if you were the mentee before, you can become the mentor. But what's also important is you get feedback on how well you listen and try these steps. See how these steps work. Okay? Okay, so can we form groups and wherever it's comfortable? There are 3 of you here, 3 of you here. Yeah, 3 here. Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to have to probably. We have 1 person, but you need to give each other. Whoever's the observer now needs to give feedback to the mentor and mentee. Okay. And then we're going to switch roles after you do feedback. Okay? Okay, so try to analyze what you saw and did you go through the different steps? And reinforce the good things. Okay? Okay, let's come back together. And again, I hope your conversations were productive. Did any of you try to do the steps? Okay, how did that work? Was that helpful? Okay, who said yes? I heard a yes back here. Why was it helpful? Oh, one of you said yes in the back. Who said yes? Yeah, Tom.
It allows for a recipe that you're able to follow. Sometimes these can come up in unexpected situations.
Right.
And it is nice to have an algorithm. We're doing mentoring now. Steps that I want to follow so that it's an effective use of time.
Effective use of time. Did any of you find that you actually had a pretty decent conversation within a couple minutes? Right. Try this. Comment?
Yeah, one of our questions was time management for young faculty.
Very good one.
And so we talked about that.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering at a future meeting, whoever sets these up, Dr. Setterman might be good for someone to give a course on time management.
Absolutely. That's a hot topic in professional development. We agree. Somebody else said yes back here. This was helpful. Any? Yeah.
Well, it kind of flowed into an answer. And I was surprised when I came up with the suggestion that I didn't know I had.
And I think that's where, if you tune into the conversation, and I would say as mentors, the hardest thing for us to do is to turn off all the other things going on in our heads. And trust me, you're all doing multiple simultaneous processing. The hardest thing to do is shut those down and focus. And then it's applying your creativity that is natural to you to somebody else. And in a way, sometimes you don't even realize if it's a good conversation, you'll get that synergy going. Okay. Yeah.
I think one of the important things, and sometimes one of the hardest things, is getting to the heart of it. Because when the person
Right.
comes into you, they may have all these different things that they're
Right.
talking about.
Right.
But the real heart of it is somewhere in
Yeah.
the middle there. And getting to the heart of it is real key so that then you can start getting in front of it.
Yeah, and that will also depend, is this someone you've met for the first time? Is this someone you've been mentoring for 2 or 3 years? And also, that's where, to me, better than email is seeing someone, because if they're sitting there looking at the floor and they really don't want to look up at you and they're telling you something's not right, you know there's something else going on. And you've got to get to the heart of it. And that's when sometimes you have to tell yourself, okay, count to 10, be quiet, because they will fill in the pause. They will want to eventually get you where they want to go. Sometimes we also don't, our mentees or we as mentees don't know how to articulate what the dilemma is. So as you are experienced mentors, you know you kind of sometimes have to sort of paint a picture and see where it sticks. So very good. Now, how'd the feedback go? Is that something, was that helpful to get some feedback on your style? Okay. I find sometimes we don't, you know, it's sort of like having a mirror to give us, but we can't see ourselves in the mirror. It's that funny cognitive processing part of us. There are always things we can do to improve. So when you have this kind of artificial kind of interaction, it makes you think, okay, what is it am I doing that will make me a better listener, that will make me better at giving feedback? These are skills that can be acquired. But I would encourage you, you all have this in your handout, and Dr. Chatterjee can make sure if you'd like it as a PowerPoint slide, try this over the next few weeks and see how it really helps. And I find it really helps, the paraphrase part will be the part when you have more time and it's quieter and there's less distraction. You're in a big noisy room here. You'll do. But I would also remind you, have your mentees own the next meeting. You don't want to schedule it. You want them to take charge because you're too busy. You've got to go on to your next patient or get your lecture ready. And you've got to, you know, unless you all have an administrative assistant sitting right at your beck and call, which most of us don't have, you've got to be very efficient with how you schedule things. Okay. Well, thank you. I wanted to congratulate you. The conversations I witnessed, I thought were very impressive. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to put these mentoring relationships to work. And I think, again, we're going to build on what we've just been doing. I consider it a dynamic relationship, so it's going to have ebbs and flows. Yeah, question? Okay, as we talk about dynamic relationships, what I really want to focus on now are a couple things to think about, just to kind of summarize what we've been talking about. You know, always keep in mind what are the roles and responsibilities if you're a mentee and if you're a mentor. And we all need mentoring, so you're going to be in multiple roles depending on what you need. If you're the mentee, make sure you, follow these kinds of real simple rules. And that maintaining confidentiality is so important. I mean, I'm never going to go out, and Kim's no longer here, I couldn't thank her, but and say, oh, Kim, had this choice on studies section and decided not to do it. That would be a total violation of ethics, so don't do that. And mentors, again, keep in mind that providing feedback and evaluating plans, that's putting all your years of experience to good use, so I think that's good. Again, as mentors, encourage your mentees to be effective. I actually like them to send me an agenda ahead, or send me an email and let me know what it is you want to focus on. Or if I haven't seen them in a while, I'll say, gee, do you have a reprint or an abstract or something I can look at? What's something new you're doing? I try to keep it low key, but say, hey, is there something you want me to look at? Respecting each other's time. That's what's nice about this sort of checklist approach, is you really can be efficient. And that's a sign of really good professionalism. Follow through, demonstrating some foresight and self-knowledge. If I went to my dean for some mentoring advice, I would want to be prepared because I would want to demonstrate that I'm worthy of his time, but that I'm going to put his insights and advice to good use. And so the two of you who worked with the dean, very good job. No pressure, right? Okay. Now, a sign of maturity as professionals is that we come to the table not just with the problems, but options. What are the solutions? And those of you who are the basic scientists in the room know when we write our grants, we always write alternatives and what are the limitations. This is something as clinicians, I think some days, we sometimes get hung up on the problems. This isn't working right, but we're not always trained to build solutions. There are always options. It just some days doesn't feel like it because we're under a lot of pressure. Your staff, if you do this kind of exercise with your staff, this is very important for them to understand that you value their input. Many times my assistants or staff have really made the difference in a project going very smoothly and being done on time. And then again, always, if you're not clear what somebody is saying to you, or reschedule more time, or buy yourself a little bit of time, and or be truthful and say, I'm missing something, and I can't meet with you today longer because I have to be at this 4 o'clock seminar, but could we reschedule? Okay. Again, good mentors, the ones that are effective, really make sure the environment's safe. And by safe, that is really a little bit of an emotional word. Everything should be safe. I mean, we're trained to make a safe environment for our patients. We have to do that for each other, okay? Again, I expect my mentees to come prepared. After a while, if they don't come prepared, guess what? I start losing interest as a mentor. It goes both directions. Try to be supportive without judging, and that's hard because we've been in their shoes. We know all the problems they can get into, but just like, if you're a parent of kids, you know this, they've got to make their own mistakes, and it's hard because, you're there as a parent trying to make sure they're not going to run into problems, but they learn from those mistakes. Always, the best gift you can try to give someone is the long view, and that's hard because we're all very good problem solvers, or we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. We're good at fixing things. The challenge is to take what's going here and broaden the discussion. And the issue may be a certain manuscript, or problems with a nurse coordinator, or you can't get enough patients for this one study, or something like that, or your subject recruitment, or the IRB is driving you crazy. It's just taking too long. I mean, all the normal things that go on, okay? Or IACUC, if you're doing animals. Oh, it's come back again. What am I doing wrong, okay? But if you can take the long view, that if we can sort of sort this one out, it's going to smooth where you want to go next. And that, number one, that reassures people. It also makes them less reactive. Because what happens is when people get anxious, they get very reactive, and they start panicking. It feeds forward. And what you want to do is slow that down so somebody can put those great analytical skills they have to work. And then as a mentor, ask really challenging questions. Sometimes with a mentor that you worked with for 6 or 7 months, you'll have conversations and they're kind of going along just fine. And then one day you'll get together and you'll sort of say, okay, let's shift the conversation today. What is it that you really want to do with your life and your career? And you'll be surprised. We don't stop and have those deep conversations. You can't have them every day or we couldn't get any work done. But once in a while, we all need to be reminded that there's a purpose to what we're doing, and are we moving in the right direction? Okay. And then again, here's a sign of maturity. If there's somebody else who can help your mentee, somebody else who really might be a good mentor in this circumstance, given whatever the circumstance is. Maybe it's someone, you're mentoring someone who's just had twins and they're not coping really well. Maybe there's a faculty member had triplets, who has 6 kids and just balances everything. Send them there. Don't hesitate. Set the stage, do the introductions, do your homework, but facilitate it. But don't take that as a sign of weakness on your part. To me, it's a sign that you're a very alert, engaged mentor. Okay? Okay. And again, communication. Like all good relationships, if the communication is not there, it starts going downhill. I would say one thing is I've noticed that we all have different styles and preferences for communication. Some people love email, some people don't like it. Some people like face-to-face meetings at 7 o'clock in the morning. Some people like to talk at 5 o'clock or during a lunch break. Find that out at the beginning when you're setting the stage. The frequency. This is something when, particularly as a more senior faculty member, sometimes the mentoring I need is really just somebody to touch bases with on a project in 3 or 4 months. Can I give you a phone call? And I just need a sounding board. You know, I know you're in the background if I run into a problem. Would that be okay? Sometimes that's the mentoring I need. Other times I need somebody, I'm in the middle of a really difficult issue. You know, I'm nervous. I've got to talk with an attorney for the university. I've never done that before. You know, this is something where it's out of my experience. Sometimes you have to talk to somebody every day, you know, while you're learning the skill set you need to do your job. And then, you know, start out with an initial plan, but recognize that, you know, chances are it'll change. And my rule of thumb, I don't discourage email because, you know, I get thousands or hundreds a day just like all of you. But I try to save face-to-face meetings. They're very important for mentoring. So if all your mentoring was virtual, I think that could have some limitations. So that's my only comment. And again, there's different options and different models. And I think you'll be exploring these in formal other workshops. Peer-to-peer mentoring can be very helpful if you get the right group, but you all have to agree to keep confidentiality or it won't work. Group mentoring can be very good, and much like we're doing right now, I think this is helpful. I have to say, though, I'm a really big proponent of there being a formal understanding, a formal commitment. So even if I ask someone to serve as a mentor, I try to set up some boundaries or duration, or how will we agree when we want to reevaluate it. You know, we're going to reevaluate it in 12 months or 18 months. Because that's being respectful of everyone's time. Now, this is a model, and I have to give credit to Janet Bickle, who used to be at the AAMC, and some of you may know her. She does a lot of writing. This is a model that she's helped develop, and we've modified it over time, where I think, again, back in the days, if you go back to that slide with my hierarchy that didn't move, in the days when things were very linear, you could probably get away with one mentor. Now things are very complex, and I would say probably for most of us we need at least 2 mentors. And keep in mind, you may have a main mentor, but learning partners, you know, folks that you've done a fellowship program with or you've taken a course with, it can be wonderful. Individuals who you think are just wonderful role models. And again, I'm always impressed with at seminars. I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's true at Pittsburgh. When we have seminars, the women faculty don't always ask questions. And yet the men are asking questions. This has been studied nationwide. This is something where I, as a senior woman, need to be a role model to make sure I'm out there asking questions so that the other women start saying, well, okay, this is something I can do too. And then experts. You know, how many of you get a consultant for your grant? I do. I find the best person on campus or across the country that's willing to help me. Cheerleaders, you know, for me, it's still my family. I'll never forget, my mother took a course, and she's college educated, but she took a course when I was probably about 40. So it was on neuroscience, so she could understand the transmitters and how to pronounce acetylcholine and serotonin. It was very sweet of her. I mean, she cares about, in fact, our cheerleaders sometimes remind us why what we do is so important to society. This political strategist one, I think of this as faculty. There's much more to what's going on many times, and I think as junior faculty we're perfectly ideal. Everything's perfect, but I'll tell you, there are choices, and politics is something women avoid, but it really is actually the decision you make and the decision you don't make. There are consequences to what you do and don't do, and we can talk about that. Another model I want to share with you, and this is one I used through the CTSA, at least this worked. I now do a lot of work with teams of individuals mentoring one person. Now, what I like about it is you can't tell who's the mentor and the mentee when everyone sits around the table. It kind of takes out some of the power structure that can go on with a mentee-mentor relationship. When you have a big famous faculty member mentoring a junior faculty member, it can be intimidating, and the challenge is to make it comfortable, where both parties are talking to each other as equals. Gesundheit. Team mentoring, again, is one where it's a great approach when you need to bring people together with very different languages and disciplines. So this might be a project that the mentee's doing, looking at imaging in the brain of adults, looking at some marker that goes on with neurodegeneration. There's a neurologist, there's a statistician, there's a chemist. There might even be somebody who's an expert in, mechanical collecting data. There are many times when we do projects now, we have to work in teams. And this is a model if you're not used to teamwork, and most of you are in the clinic setting, but you haven't always applied it to your scholarship. I find this is one of the best ways to get your scholarship up and running, particularly if you're a clinician and you're feeling that you have very little time to do scholarly work. I would say find yourself a team and share the work. Bring the expertise together. Okay, you've all been wondering, no one's asked me what's the green card for, but it's time for your green card. I'm hoping you all have pen and paper or pencil. What I'd like you to do, take a moment, on one side of the card, write down 3 goals that you have for your mentoring relationship. Think of a mentoring relationship that you're in, and what are the goals? Why are you doing that mentoring relationship? And on the back side, write down 3 expectations you have for that mentoring relationship. Okay? So 3 goals and 3 expectations. Okay? Last but not least, I think you're in the most wonderful world you could possibly be in. I think academic careers are wonderful. And I think if you develop relationships as mentors and mentees with each other, the richness of this professional community will continue to grow over time in ways that are just absolutely wonderful. And I want you to leave thinking back today on that person that mentored you, that you reflected on, because I saw each of you excited and optimistic. If that person is still on this face of the earth, they may have passed on, send them a note today that you were at a mentoring session and you still remember what a difference they made in your life at that one time, okay? And that's a pretty high bar. So if you can meet that, I know your careers will go more smoothly and the roller coaster will seem a little flatter and not quite so hilly. And in the meantime, I want you all to think good thoughts for the Super Bowl next week. And I realize we're close to the folks that wear the cheese on their head, but I want you to think good thoughts for the Steelers too. So, okay, thank you. And